The text appeared on my phone just as I was finishing my lunch. Don't bother coming for Thanksgiving this year. You're pathetic. Stop mooching off the family. Zimo. I stared at it, mouth dry. My heart thudded. Zimo, my younger brother, had always depended on me, my paycheck, my kindness, my patience. And now he had the audacity to tell me I wasn't welcome in our own home. While living rent-free in the apartment I had been paying for, month after month. I didn't reply. I didn't pack a dish. I didn't go. But I smiled quietly to myself, because patience is a weapon. And I was about to teach him a lesson he'd never forget. Lyra sat on her small couch, phone in hand, reading the message again and again. Don't bother coming for Thanksgiving this year. You're pathetic. Her heart sank. It was from Zimo, her younger brother, the same boy she had cared for since their parents left most responsibilities on her shoulders. For years, she had paid his rent, bought his groceries, and even covered his bills whenever he came crying that he was short on cash. She never complained. She thought she was helping him get on his feet. But now this message? It felt like a knife to her chest. She stared at the words until they blurred. Anger and sadness mixed inside her. How could Zimo, the one she sacrificed so much for, speak to her like that? She remembered the nights she went hungry just so he could eat, the months she worked double shifts to make sure his rent was paid, and how she always believed he'd one day say, "Thank you, sister." Instead, he called her pathetic. At first, Lyra wanted to reply, to defend herself, to remind him of everything she had done. But she stopped. Something inside her went quiet. She realized that maybe, for once, silence could speak louder than anger. So, she didn't type a single word back. She just sat there, breathing slowly, her heart heavy but her mind growing clear. Thanksgiving was only a few days away. Normally she would bake, bring gifts, and help Zimo organize the dinner. But this time, she decided she wouldn't go. She wouldn't call. She wouldn't pay his rent. She would let him live exactly the way he thought he wanted, free from her help. That night, as she turned off her phone and sat by her window, a strange calmness came over her. She wasn't going to cry anymore. She wasn't going to chase people who couldn't see her worth. If Zimo thought she was pathetic for being kind, then he was about to learn what her absence felt like. In her heart, a small spark began to form, not of revenge, but of resolve. For the first time, she thought about what life could look like if she stopped fixing other people's messes and started caring for herself. And as the city lights blinked in the distance, she whispered to herself, "Let him see how strong I can be without him." The next evening, Lyra passed by Zimo's apartment building on her way home. She hadn't planned to look, but when she saw lights flashing through his windows and people moving around inside, she paused for a moment. Curious, she crossed the street and stood quietly by the corner. Through the open window, she could hear laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Zimo was throwing a Thanksgiving party, the one she used to help organize every year. From where she stood, she could see him showing off, telling stories and bragging loudly. He was wearing new clothes, his friends were cheering, and the place looked beautiful. Shiny decorations, candles, expensive food, and even a new sound system. Lyra felt a tightness in her chest. Every little thing in that apartment had her fingerprints on it. The rent she had paid, the furniture she had bought, even the dishes he was using to serve his friends. She heard one of his friends laugh and say, "Man, you're really living the life. Must be nice not to worry about bills." Zimo grinned and raised his glass proudly. "Yeah, I'm free now. No one controls me anymore." His words stung. Like salt on a wound. He spoke as if she had been a burden to him, not the one keeping him afloat all these years. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't move. She watched him enjoying himself, surrounded by people who had no idea the truth behind his freedom. Every smile he gave, every word he spoke, showed her one thing. He had grown spoiled because she had made his life too easy. She had protected him from the real world for so long that he started believing he was doing it all on his own. A cold breeze brushed against her, but she didn't notice. Her mind was racing. All those years of paying his rent, buying his groceries, helping him with job applications, it had made him weaker, not stronger. And now, instead of saying thank you, he was acting like she had held him back. Lyra finally turned and walked away. The laughter behind her faded, replaced by the quiet sound of her own footsteps. She wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. She realized Zimo didn't need more help. He needed reality. And as she walked home under the dim streetlights, she made a silent promise to herself. She would stop saving him. It was time for him to learn what freedom really costs. The next morning, Lyra sat at her small dining table with a cup of tea and her laptop open. Something inside her told her it was time to face the truth. Not just what Zimo said, but what she had allowed for years. She pulled out an old folder from the drawer, one filled with bills, receipts, and notes she had kept without thinking much about them. As she spread them across the table, the past came back to her in pieces. Electricity bills, rent payments, grocery receipts, and money transfer slips, all with Zimo's name or address. She picked up one paper after another, tracing the dates with her fingers. There was the time he said he couldn't afford rent, and she paid it in full. Another month when his electricity was about to be cut off, and she covered the entire amount. Even that fancy Thanksgiving dinner from 2 years ago, the one he called his treat, had been secretly charged to her card. With each paper, her heart sank a little deeper. She had done all this out of love, but he had taken it as his right. For hours she worked in silence, organizing everything. She made a list, writing down every amount she had spent. When she added them all together, she froze. The number on the screen was bigger than she ever imagined. Enough to buy a small house or a new car. Her hands trembled as she stared at it. That was her hard-earned money. Years of effort, gone without even a word of thanks. She leaned back in her chair, staring at the stack of papers that told the real story. Not of love, but of one-sided sacrifice. She realized she hadn't just been paying bills. She had been paying for peace, for his comfort, for the hope that he would finally appreciate her. But all she got in return was disrespect. As the daylight faded, she carefully placed all the documents into a neat file. This wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. For once, she wanted to see clearly what her kindness had cost her. She looked at the folder, her name written neatly on the front, and whispered to herself, "No more." That night, she didn't feel weak or sad. She felt powerful. For the first time in years, she knew exactly what she had given, and exactly what she would never give again. A few days later, when Thanksgiving morning arrived, Lyra woke up feeling strangely calm. She had made her decision. There would be no shouting, no argument, no long explanations. She was done begging people to value her. Instead, she picked up her phone and typed a short, simple message. "Hey Zimo, I hope your Thanksgiving goes well. By the way, I'm going to skip paying your rent this month." She read it once, smiled slightly, and hit send. She didn't write anything else, no anger, no emotion, just truth. Then she put her phone aside and went about her day, cleaning her small apartment, cooking a simple meal for herself, and enjoying the peace. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing to help someone else. It felt freeing. Meanwhile, at Zimo's apartment, the message popped up on his phone while he was busy setting up for the party. He laughed when he read it, showing it to his friends. "My sister is funny," he said, shaking his head. "She thinks she's the landlord or something." Everyone laughed along, thinking it was just a silly joke between siblings. Zimo didn't even reply. He was too busy enjoying his moment. But for Lyra, it wasn't a joke. She knew exactly what that text meant. It was her first step toward breaking free from years of emotional and financial control. She didn't need to fight or defend herself anymore. Silence would do the work for her. The next day, when the rent company sent their usual reminder, Zimo ignored it, assuming Lyra had already paid as always. But as the days passed, another notice came. This time, it was marked late payment warning. Zimo's heart skipped. He called Lyra immediately, half laughing, half worried. "Hey, I got a weird message about the rent. Did you forget to pay?" Lyra's voice was calm. "No, Zimo. I didn't forget. I just meant what I said." There was a long pause on the line. "Wait, you're serious?" he asked, confusion in his tone. "Completely," she replied softly. "You told me not to come for Thanksgiving. So I didn't. And I'm not paying your rent either." Then she ended the call. For the first time, Zimo felt something new, uncertainty. He looked around his apartment, at all the things he took for granted, and realized they were all possible because of her. The silence from her side wasn't cold. It was powerful. And for the first time, he understood that maybe this time, Lyra wasn't going to fix things for him. A week after Thanksgiving, Zimo woke up to a series of missed calls and messages from the rent office. At first he ignored them, thinking it was a mistake. After all, the rent had always been handled. But as the day went on, the calls became more frequent, and the messages grew more serious. Your rent payment is overdue. Please settle immediately to avoid penalties. His stomach dropped. For the first time, the safety net he didn't even realize he had was gone. He called the office back, his voice unsure. There must be a mistake, he said. My rent is always paid on time. The woman on the line replied politely but firmly. Not this time, sir. The payment hasn't come through. Zimo's mind went blank. He checked his bank account and saw the ugly truth. There wasn't enough money to cover the full rent. He hadn't saved a thing. He had spent everything on that Thanksgiving party. Thinking life would keep running smoothly, panic set in. He began pacing his living room, calling Lyra again and again. When she finally picked up, her voice was calm and collected. Lyra, the rent office just called me. Did you forget to pay? He asked quickly, trying to sound casual, but his voice was trembling. No, Zimo, she said softly. I didn't forget. I stopped paying it. He froze. What? You can't be serious. I am, she said. You told me not to come for Thanksgiving because I was pathetic. You made it clear you didn't need me. So now you'll see what that looks like. Her words hit him harder than he expected. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was overreacting, but deep down he knew she wasn't. He had taken her kindness for granted for far too long. Every time she paid his bills, every time she rescued him from another late fee or eviction notice, he thought it was just what she was supposed to do. But now, without her help, the reality of his situation became painfully clear. Zimo sat on his couch, staring at the walls. The apartment suddenly felt colder and emptier than ever before. All the luxury he showed off to his friends, the nice couch, the fancy TV, the decorations, none of it really belonged to him. They were all built on Lyra's sacrifices. He called her again, but this time his tone was different. Lyra, please, I can't afford this right now. I'll pay you back later. Just help me one more time. But Lyra didn't waver. Her voice remained calm. No, Zimo. You need to learn to stand on your own. I've carried you long enough. And before he could respond, she ended the call. For the first time in his life, Zimo realized what true responsibility felt like, and it terrified him. Within days, Zimo's world started falling apart. His friends who shared the apartment began to notice the warning letters piling up near the door. One of them asked, Zimo, what's going on with the rent? The landlord called me too. Zimo brushed it off at first, saying it was just a delay, but the truth couldn't stay hidden for long. When the eviction notice came, everyone knew something was seriously wrong. His friends were confused. They had always believed Zimo was well off and responsible. None of them imagined that his older sister had been secretly paying for everything. Word reached their parents quickly. His mother called Lyra, her voice sharp with anger. What is this I'm hearing? You stopped paying Zimo's rent? Why would you embarrass the family like this? Lyra listened quietly, letting her mother speak. When she finally answered, her voice was calm but steady. Because it was never my job to pay it in the first place, Mama. I've been doing it for years. And he never once said thank you. Her mother gasped. What do you mean for years? Lyra sighed and opened the folder she had prepared earlier. The one with every receipt, every transfer, every record of sacrifice she had made. She started reading out loud, one payment after another. His first rent $600. His groceries $150 every month. His phone bill, his electricity, even the clothes he wore to his job interview. All paid by me. Their father, who had been quiet the whole time, finally spoke. Lyra, that can't be true. He told us. He was managing his own life. Lyra's voice didn't shake. No, Baba. He's been living off me. Every time he said he was doing fine, it was because I was covering for him. There was silence on the other end of the call. Their parents didn't know what to say. It was as if a curtain had been pulled back, showing the truth they had chosen to ignore. Zimo had always been the charming, confident son who could do no wrong, while Lyra was the quiet, responsible one who never complained. Now the roles were clear. She had been holding everything together while he lived without consequences. Her mother finally whispered, He's still your brother, Lyra. You shouldn't have let him suffer. Lyra replied softly, I didn't let him suffer. I'm letting him grow. When the call ended, she sat in silence, feeling both heavy and free. For the first time, everyone knew the truth. There were no more secrets, no more pretending. The chaos had finally revealed who was truly strong, and it wasn't the one they had always praised. The following week was a nightmare for Zimo. The landlord gave him an ultimatum: pay the rent within 5 days or leave the apartment. His friends, tired of the stress, began packing their things. The once lively apartment that had echoed with laughter during Thanksgiving was now filled with silence and tension. The decorations still hung on the wall, but they felt like reminders of his foolish pride. Every time he looked around, all he could see were the results of his carelessness. He called everyone he could think of, old friends, co-workers, even distant cousins, hoping someone would lend him the money. But everyone had excuses. "I wish I could help, man," one friend said, "but I'm tight on cash right now." The truth was, no one wanted to take responsibility for someone who never learned to handle his own. When the last call failed, Zimo sat alone in his living room, head in his hands. For the first time in his life, he felt helpless. Eventually he called Lyra again. His voice was softer now, stripped of arrogance. "Lyra, please," he said quietly. "I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. I didn't realize how much you were doing for me. Please just help me one more time. I promise I'll change." On the other side of the line, Lyra listened, calm and steady. "Zimo, this isn't about money anymore," she said gently. "This is about you understanding what your choices cost." He tried again, desperate. "I'll pay you back, I swear. I'll get another job. I'll do better, just don't let them throw me out." Lyra took a deep breath. "I didn't do this to punish you. I did it to show you the cost of your behavior. You called me pathetic for helping you. Now you can see how hard it is to stand alone." Her words hit him like a mirror being held up to his face. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew she was right. She had carried him for so long that he had forgotten how to carry himself. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized just how selfish he had been. After that call, Zimo didn't beg anyone else. He sat quietly, thinking about all the times Lyra had stepped in. The late-night transfers, the kind messages, the patience she always showed. He remembered how easy he had made it for himself to forget her sacrifices. Now, with nothing left but silence and an empty apartment, the truth sank deep into his heart. That night, he started searching for jobs online. It wasn't easy, but for the first time he wasn't waiting for Lyra to fix things. He was finally beginning to understand what responsibility really meant. After their last conversation, Zimo finally understood that no one was coming to save him this time. Lyra had made up her mind, and deep down he knew she was right. The eviction notice on his door reminded him that his comfort had been built on her sacrifices. So he decided to do something he had avoided for years: take responsibility for his own life. He began applying for jobs everywhere he could. At first it was humiliating. He had always thought certain jobs were beneath him. But now reality had stripped him of pride. He went from office to office, filling out forms, waiting for callbacks that never came. His savings were gone, and the little help he got from friends barely covered food. It was the hardest period of his life, but it was also the first time he was standing on his own 2 feet. When he finally got hired at a local electronics store, the pay was small, and the work was tiring. He spent long hours on his feet, talking to customers, cleaning shelves, and handling deliveries. Some days he came home so exhausted that he could barely eat. Yet strangely, it gave him a new kind of peace, the kind that came from earning something by himself. Every month he sent Lyra a small amount of money. It wasn't much, but it was honest. At first she refused to take it, but he insisted. "You said I needed to learn," he told her softly. "This is part of it." Lyra smiled and accepted, not because she needed the money, but because she could finally see her brother growing up. Zimo began to change. He stopped going out with friends who only cared about parties. He started budgeting his money, planning ahead, and thinking before spending. He even apologized to his roommates for dragging them into his mess. They noticed how much he had changed, quieter, more thoughtful, and far more humble than before. Months passed, and Zimo slowly rebuilt his life. He managed to pay off his debts, move into a smaller but affordable apartment, and stand on his own without anyone's help. Sometimes he missed the easy days when Lyra handled everything, but now he understood that those days had made him weak. One evening, As he transferred his final payment to Lyra, he felt tears in his eyes. He realized she hadn't stopped helping him to be cruel. She had done it to save him from himself. That night, he sent her a message. "Thank you for letting me struggle. I finally understand what you were trying to teach me." And for the first time, Lyra replied, "I'm proud of you, Zimo." While Zimo was busy learning to stand on his own, Lyra was finally learning to live for herself. For years, she had spent every paycheck trying to fix her brother's problems, his rent, his debts, his mistakes. But this time, she took that same money and used it differently. She opened a small online store, selling handmade candles and home decor. It started small, just a few orders from friends, but soon word spread. People loved her designs and slowly, her business began to grow. Each sale gave her a quiet sense of pride. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't working just to cover someone else's mess. She was building something of her own. She began saving carefully, putting a little away each week. By the end of a few months, she had enough to buy a small plot of land on the edge of town. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. That feeling of independence and control was something no amount of applause or approval could replace. Lyra also learned the power of boundaries. When Zimo called to ask for help or advice, she didn't rush to fix everything like before. Instead, she listened, offered calm guidance, and reminded him that he was capable of handling things himself. It wasn't coldness. It was respect, both for herself and for him. She finally understood that love didn't mean rescuing someone. Sometimes it meant stepping back and letting them grow. Zimo noticed the change in her. She no longer sounded tired or frustrated when they talked. Her voice carried peace, strength, and quiet happiness. He began to admire her more than ever. Humbled by his own mistakes, he made sure to pay his share of the bills and help whenever he could. He didn't want to disappoint her again. Slowly, the bond between them started to rebuild. Not one of dependence, but of mutual respect. Sometimes Lyra would sit on her balcony at night, watching the candles she made flicker in the dark. She thought about how far both of them had come. She used to think helping Zimo meant sacrificing herself. Now she knew that true help came from strength, not exhaustion. By the time Zimo got a promotion at his job, he proudly told her he had paid off all his debts. Lyra smiled and congratulated him, but deep inside, she already knew he would make it. They had both changed. Zimo had learned humility and responsibility, while Lyra had discovered freedom and self-worth. Her quiet empowerment didn't come from loud success or revenge. It came from peace, from knowing she could love her brother without losing herself. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving life. She was truly living it, on her own terms. A year passed, and the seasons turned quietly. Lyra had grown used to her peaceful life. Her business was stable, her small home was cozy, and her heart finally felt light. She hadn't expected anything from Zimo anymore. They spoke sometimes, kindly but briefly, and she was content keeping her distance. But then one chilly November evening, she received a message from him. "Hey, Lyra. I'm hosting Thanksgiving this year. Just me, some food, nothing fancy. Will you come?" For a moment, she stared at the screen, unsure. Last year's Thanksgiving had been full of hurt, pride, and silence. But something in his message felt different, honest, soft, and real. So she agreed. When Lyra arrived, she was surprised. There were no decorations, no expensive food, no crowd. Just a small table, 2 plates, a few candles, and a home-cooked meal that smelled like effort and sincerity. Zimo stood there, nervous but smiling, his apron a little crooked. He had done everything himself. They sat together, talking about simple things, work, memories, funny childhood stories. There was no tension, no guilt hanging in the air. Just warmth. After dinner, Zimo looked at her, his eyes wet with emotion. "Thank you," he said, quietly, "for everything. For letting me fall. For not saving me this time. You taught me what responsibility really means." Lyra didn't speak right away. She just smiled gently, her eyes soft but calm. She didn't need to say, "I forgive you," or "I'm proud of you." The peace between them said it all. She noticed how much he had changed. The arrogance was gone. He talked about his new job, how he budgeted carefully, how he helped a friend pay rent when he was struggling. "Not to rescue him," Zimo said, "but to remind him that we can all do better." Lyra's heart swelled with quiet pride. When she stood to leave, Zimo hugged her, A real thankful hug. Not the kind that hides guilt or asks for something. Just gratitude. As Lyra walked home through the cool night air, she realized something profound. She hadn't needed revenge, or even an apology. What she needed was respect, and she had finally earned it, not by fighting, but by standing still and letting her boundaries speak for her. Love without respect, she thought, is like a gift that's never opened, wasted and forgotten. But love with understanding, even when it takes time to grow, is the kind that lasts. And that night, under the quiet stars, Lyra felt it deeply, the peace of someone who taught the hardest lesson without raising her voice, and found strength in choosing herself. If you felt Lyra's quiet strength in this story, don't scroll past. Hit like to honor every person who's learned to say no with love. Comment, respect over everything, if you believe boundaries are powerful. And subscribe for more emotional, life-changing stories like this one. Because sometimes, the softest revenge is peace.